Wasabi, everybody. This is Kendra with Mind Melt Podcast. Today we have a lovely episode with one of our favorite mentors, Shivoso with Intimacy Arts. He specializes in relationships of all kinds. We look forward to doing live events with Shivoso, but for now, if you'd like to get in contact with him, go to intimacyarts.com. Also, we just released another podcast called Top Tier Underground. It's available on all the major platforms. We are very excited to bring you a new music artist every week with an interview and DJ mix. Oh, and I just got my Instagram up for it, so go follow me at Top Tier Underground. And now, enjoy the episode.
We are here with Shivoso Phoenix, king of Intimacy Arts. And we had you on a few months ago and people loved it. You know, they loved our conversation, and I always love our conversation on or off the mic. You know, it's always a pleasure to sit down and talk to you, but this time we have Kendra, so it's even better.
Hello.
I'm stoked.
Yeah, I got quite a few emails from that podcast, I will tell you, by a lot of girlfriends of mine.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really glad to have Kendra here. It's like balance things out a little bit, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, you can't have all that testosterone in one building. Sometimes you got to have a little bit of the feminine.
Yeah.
It's funny. That's actually a lot of the I guess comments that I've heard is that they like having the feminine and the masculine energy on the podcast. So
from like reviews of our podcast?
Yeah. So lately I've been getting a lot of these, like other people on, and it's just been me and them. So it's really refreshing to bring Kendra back on and not be crowding the space so much.
That's just another like angle on the perspective. And this is such, relationship is about dyadic, and a lot of times it's cisgendered, just, gender oriented stuff. And so there's no way that me as a man can actually know the experience of a woman, right? I can make guesses, I can study it, I can, become an anthropologist kind of studying this thing, but I don't really know, right? And so those subtle perspective differences are so essential to really, hacking into this thing called relationship, because a lot of it is based on these dyadic things. It's not same sex all the time. So it's really important to get that diversity in there. And this is just, here we are, we're just our white folk diversity bit, but there's still a lot more to bring into it. Most of my training was kind of really about cisgendered normative relationships, right? All of the tantra stuff I studied back in the day was always about a man and a woman, right?
Yeah.
And I started to back away from that or generalize from that, but there's certain aspects of life that I don't have personal experience with, like being a woman or being gay, and there's being a person of color. I can't speak to those, but what I can speak to is the general, you make generalities and you recognize that it's a spectrum. There's always going to be exceptions to the rule. There's going to be edges around that. So, I'm really cautious about making too many specific generalities, but there are patterns of human mating. There are patterns that culture has given us that we can actually hack into and do something about, rather than just being the victims of, or just sort of repeat these kind of patterns without being aware that they're actually a choice, that there's something you can actually learn about.
Have you ever read any Sapolsky work? I think I've talked to you about this before.
Yeah, I've watched some of his videos and things like that, his YouTubes and some of his lectures and things like that. I mean, obviously it's kind of my geek too, because there it is, cultural anthropology and evolutionary biology are really kind of, that's what I call the hardware. Right. And you really got to know where the hardware and the software interface, right? Because culture is a user interface on a human genome. Right. And it's an overlay, and it's constantly evolving and changing. As part of why we're so good at surviving is we do actually change our superficial actions to match the environment. And that's what's made us one of the most successful mammal species on the planet, is we can change the way we are. And a lot of our mating behavior has so much to do with the environment we're actually in. And marriage, for instance, what a great invention. It's not biologically imperative by any stretch of the imagination, but we pretend it is, and that's where we get into a lot of trouble. Is like, oh, well, we get the software and the hardware confused. And hardware, you can't hack very much, but you can work around it, But the software, you can mess with that all sorts of different ways.
Man, I just read this book, and I didn't just read it, but I just read it again. And it's called The Evolution of Desire. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
You read that one?
I haven't.
Oh, man.
Is that, trying to think, what's the author on that?
Man, I wish I could remember right now, but he is I think he's a teacher, like an evolutionary biologist or biology teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But man, it's so good. I mean, I like it because, Sex at Dawn gets a little bit outside of, it makes a lot of speculative claims. I think that I just, I really like Chris Ryan, and I follow his career, and I really enjoy listening to him talk and all these things. But I mean, just to be completely honest, I think that it was a little bit of a, it was way too much weight in one area, and I think that with this other one, Evolution of Desire, he talks a lot about polyamory and polygamy, but he also talks about monogamy and the importance of that and how that sustained cultures and it. But I mean, it's just amazing. It's a great book, and it's on my Audible. I can totally, if you want to check it out.
I may have actually read it already some time ago. I'm trying to remember if it's the guy who did a lot of studies on, preferences and how the masculine and the feminine, what they desire, and he did a lot of his work with undergraduate students.
Yeah, he did like 2,000
surveys, right? And it was there's just like in Sex at Dawn. Well, there's a bias built into there.
Right.
Number one, you're working with kids basically who are still not at all like experienced at what marriage and all that kind of stuff. So we've all evolved, right? As we've gotten older, we're like, oh wait, I want something a little more different than I thought,
Right.
So you have to take that grain of salt. It's really great information on some basic stuff. But once again, you say, oh, I have to cross-pollinate that with some other information in order to get a better picture of what's really going on out there. I really liked his stuff. It was another seminal text.
This is what I like about science is that, it's accumulative and you don't need to stick with one thing. I mean, it's like I think that a part of our human nature is that we feel like we need it to be black or white. It needs to be this way or that way instead of just like
needs to be a reason for everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of just blending it and realizing that there's always one-offs and there's, different interpretations of the same thing, and every coin has two sides, and there's,
Yeah, we don't actually ever really know everything. As you dig in deeper to everything, you finally reach this place where it just becomes a mystery, right? And that's the great mystery. You're like, okay, but we can get statistical information. We can get averages. Science is fucking amazing. And it's really great.
Right.
It reminds me, there's this great book that I just popped into. This guy, Dr. Eli Finkel, he did a TED Talk a few years ago. And he finally wrote a book called The All or Nothing Marriage. And it's about he starts out, the whole first half is all cultural anthropology of how we got marriage to the place it is now, from like the Middle Ages, from the Dark Ages, and how it evolved to being this thing it is here in America, especially, and our expectations for what we require out of a marriage or out of a dyadic committed relationship has evolved to meet and match kind of as the culture or civilization advances or changes. And he's really done all the science, and he does all the references. So it's not just some sort of woo-woo, just winging it kind of book. Him and Esther Pearl are two, scientist type.
Is Esther a female?
Yes.
Okay, because I think I've heard of her before.
Yeah, you should really check out her stuff as well. Because it's a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about is what they've also discovered, right? And I was like, I get all this validation. I was like, oh, fuck, I already knew that. It's like, you're right. You're so right. But it's getting that information out there. Really, it's about, hey, are people going to read these books, or are they going to get into it to find out? It's like, what can we do to make our relationships closer to what we really want and to address the actual problems that are just inherently in every kind of pattern that you want in relationship, whether it's polyamory or multiple people or whatever. They each solve some problems and create new ones, right? And so we do want a lot more. And that's what this book is about, is like, yeah, we actually are a culture of personal growth. Yeah. And we no longer just want economic stability. We don't want to just breed children and have the homemaker thing, which, as he points out, and I knew, it's just a cultural blip. It's only been around for about 100 years or so. Exactly. You know, it's like,
that's the funniest thing about our understanding, is that it's so recent. I mean,
it's parochial. It's like, it's like these little myopic ideas that this is how it's supposed to be. You know, one man, one woman, have a baby. Guy goes to work. Woman stays home and watches the kids. Only really worked for about a generation, about my parents' generation. That was the ideal they reached for. And then as soon as they got it, they were like, this isn't it. I don't feel fulfilled. Right. I feel safe. The kids are good. All the institutions are in place, and we're all going nuts, right? So divorce rates soared in the 70s and 80s as people wanted something more, and they kept looking outside of marriage to do that. But now actually there's this great reversal of that trend. People are getting married and staying married longer because they're getting married with a clear sight of why they're getting married, right?
Yeah, and women are educated more, and
absolutely,
women are way more empowered today than back then. They're so much more empowered, and there's still a lot more room to grow. But I mean, the fact that, like with Kendra, I mean,
I have a choice. I mean, I can I can go learn music and go
talk
to
me about men. And
absolutely.
And it used to be, there was laws up until the 1960s that women couldn't have credit without their husband's approval.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, you guys have no idea the world I grew up in and how much it's changed, right? Which, on one level, obviously is fucking fantastic, right? You've got now women have control of their fertility, which never happened in
this is only in years. This is like and obviously it's in some Western Europe countries and stuff, in our country, but there's still a lot of countries where this is completely out of mind. I mean, this is like we're still so far behind right now in the United States, and compared to some cultures and countries, we are so fucking far ahead.
Far ahead.
Saudi Arabia, they just allowed women to start driving, and up until that point, they said that women couldn't drive because the bumps in the car were going to make them infertile.
Right. I mean,
that was their reasoning. And
we're barely coming out of the dark ages.
Yeah.
And those of us who are privileged enough to have the kind of education and the kind of safety that we can actually kind of like, well, let's look at our next level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, we're kind of focusing on both belonging and on self-realization, self-actualization, basically the top, because we don't worry about food too much, right? We live in a country where we don't actually worry about violence that much. Like, our survival isn't on the line. You know, even though if I lost my house and my car, I'd be in a shelter right away. I'd have friends. I have networks. There's food. It's like there's people living on the streets in San Francisco who have a freaking, it's not great, but they have a great tent. I mean, they have nice camping tents. They got their chaise lounge outside. They're eating, food out of the dumpster, but it's like, I saw some guy having tiramisu right on the street. And I'm like, yeah, it's bad, but it's like so affluent here. We don't even notice.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no idea what it was like even 100 years ago, or even during the Great Depression when people were starving, and it's like,
can you imagine living in a time where 85% of your day consisted of just trying to find food, water, and shelter? I mean, and then now it's like, I think that we kind of in a weird way long for that, because that was so recent. I mean, that really was really recent. And compared to, the timeline of
evolutionary history.
Right.
It's just like yesterday, and we could go back to it too. It's like,
easily
subsistence living, and there's good subsistence and bad, right? Foragers and nomads did pretty well. They spent about 7 hours a week on survival. But that was 10,000 years ago when there was just a few humans, right?
Well,
and there was a lot of abundance, and they starved. They had bad, a lot of bad shit happened. But it wasn't quite as brutish and short as it ended up being in the Middle Ages and during some of the early 1700s, cities crowding people together, disease, So we're kind of pulling ourselves back to a place where, we could actually create sustainable. But we got world population issues. There's all sorts of stuff we can get into.
I think that it's not so much a world population issue. It's more of a use of resources issue. Like the way that we use our resources is just...
It's both. It's both for sure.
Yeah. And I mean,
7.5 billion is no joke.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I guess I have a little bit more optimism with that. I think that if we continue to grow at the rate that we're growing, which is obviously going to happen. I mean, we're not slowing down by any means, especially in third world countries. But I think that, do you know who Steven Pinker is?
Sure.
Have you ever read The Better Angels of Our Demons or any of his books?
I haven't read his books yet. I've listened to him,
Yeah, because he has some books out there that, I mean, he just like lays it out in a way that obviously it's really easy to get caught up in the negative. Like, we're overpopulated.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going on. And I agree with you, just to jump in. It's like, yeah, there's actually a lot of reasons for optimism. And kind of part of it is how we relate as humans, something we talked about earlier.
Right.
It's like how we get along with each other is so crucial to this. If we're going to be that many people and we're going to have to share resources and we're going to have to like collaborate, there's a trend to kind of pull things in. And what we need to do is actually open things up a bit. Right. Yeah. And I think that, in my opinion, it's like the crucible of where that starts is in the intimate relationships and in the family. It's where we learn to actually interact with people. And, the last couple of generations haven't done that well with raising kids, where you got a lot of, and the culture itself is kind of like tough for humans to live in. It's very maladaptive for our psyches, right? And so we're actually dealing with a lot of depression and anxiety, a lot of trouble with mating and relating, right? It's like, oh, wow, so many people have childhood traumas or difficult childhoods, even in an affluent country like the United States.
Oh, yeah.
That it's almost ubiquitous that we're dealing with people who just have some neurobiological issues or psychological issues that make intimacy challenging in some way. And then we got all the cultural factors around that, religions and all the kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, okay, where do we like, I decided to hack it. I used to do activism and political, all sorts of stuff. And I said, wait a minute, where's the root? The root is in these dyads that create children. So I didn't really want to do early childhood development or teach kids and things like that. I wanted to teach the parents or the potential parents how to be in relationship that's harmonious, growing, fulfills their desire for that self-actualization without creating some kind of like rigid structure, something that fits the ideals that we're all want, that Disney romance has a resonance in us, or it would have never occurred to us archetypally, right? To have this this beautiful forever, happily forever after kind of relationship with great sex and great food and great shelter and, all the other things that the trappings we kind of want. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in that era, right? And I was kind of like, oh yeah, love and marriage, baby carriage, it was all going to work out just great. Once you're in love, that's how it was going to be. And it never was like that, right? Everybody goes, oh yeah, the other meme was ball and chain, marriage is hell, all that kind of stuff. And it was like,
well, which so lucky?
Yeah, which one's true? And how do you navigate down that middle course where you can have that harmony and the kind of autonomy, but still have a solid structure that has to create security and kind of some kind of stability for kids and yourself to grow from, right? You can't do this if you're in survival. Absolutely. You can't do it. You just don't have time, And most people, even in the States, are in survival. They're working 40 to 60 hours a week just to make ends meet.
Right.
Doesn't leave much time for love.
Well, that's the same thing. To bring that point kind of around, it's like we used to spend 85% of our time doing hunting and gathering, and now we just spend 85% of our time doing the modern day version of hunting and gathering, because
basically,
and it's basically trying to search for resources in that way.
And status syncing, I mean, a lot of what we think of as greed is really just status displays, right? We want to have those with power, those with access to resources do have better access to better mates, right? But the whole game
of desire, that book is all about that right there. And it's just about how, I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but one of the things that he says in that book is, like, at the end of the day, most of what men do is to court females. I mean, like, being a CEO, high power job, it's showing, it's our modern day version of showing, hey, I've got this. I can provide a shelter. I can provide food.
Right.
The kid's going to have a safe home and all these things. And it's, we're at a very interesting time politically where there's a lot of, this isn't to talk down upon the feminist movement or anything like that, because I'm obviously totally into it. But there is a real thing where, like, even though men are a lot of times in these high power positions and stuff like that, it seems like they're doing it because they're trying to get females in a very it's you have to really think about it to recognize that. You can't just, you know what I mean? Like, they might not even realize that that's why they're doing it.
They basically don't. It's all sublimation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think Gurdjieff, back in 19 whatever, pointed this out, is like everything that we do in the masculine world is around mate acquisition. Okay. And it's like, that's what we drive civilization forward. It's competition for resources, so we can look good, so we get the right, and our DNA can pass on. I mean, the whole thing, like I said, there's this hardware around our DNA that's, driving the whole thing. And we can either just let that happen, or we can say, oh, now we can actually sort of observe it
and hack it.
Yeah, you got to use that energy, which was kind of the whole point of something like sacred sexuality, is like, oh, let's take this thing that that's like one of the most powerful drives in our, a whole reality, and harness it towards something higher rather than just pleasure or reproduction. Let's take this and bring it like drive us towards sacred, right? And instead of oppressing it like a lot of the religions did, it was like, no, let's use that. And it's like, brilliant. Of course, if you've got a river and it's flowing, you want to block that river, it's going to take a lot of work. Or you can use that energy that's just flowing by and use it for your own ends, right? Create energy, create power, divert it in different ways without trying to block it or stop it.
Yeah. So obviously the echoes of the Enlightenment in a way, like, I think the echoes of this weird religion era that we went through, where especially in America, where it was so suppressed, and people thought that if you were having I mean, look at especially like Catholicism and Islam is like a whole nother level of crazy with it. But you get these cultural echoes, and at the time that these things arrived, it was maybe for a reason, in their own weird ways. It was like a cultural necessity in order to have safe mating and things like that. But we're so far past that, but we hear these echoes coming forward.
We still live in a Puritan culture.
We're Puritan. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, because Puritans protested against the Catholics because Catholicism seemed so corrupt, and they also conceived that not everybody's going to get to heaven, that there was a certain path to heaven, and part of that was indicated by worldly success and health. And so they said anybody who's not, successful is going to hell, and you don't want to be associated with those people. You don't want to help them out. It was kind of like anti-Christianity, right? It was like, oh, you guys are on your own, which is exactly what we see in this culture now. It's like, try to get some healthcare or try to get some counseling for your relationship. It's going to cost you dough. And if you don't have the dough, good luck. Yeah. Right? You just have to wing it and figure it out.
You're spending money on a fucking wall.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we got to spend money on a wall. We need some more bombs. But once again, it's like the information's available, right? Yeah. And it's like that's kind of what I wanted to do all along, was like create ways so that people who didn't have a lot of money or were just coming up in the world and on their way to creating some kind of affluence could access this information when they're raising their kids. Because I saw a lot in the self-help and workshop world that it was like people my age in their 50s and 60s that were finally showing up for these workshops and self-improvement because they could afford it. Right.
Yeah.
By that time, their kids are already grown up and in therapy themselves. You know, they're like slaving away, and they passed on all the mistakes. Better to get them in their 20s and 30s before they have kids, or while they're in the process of raising kids, to do this work.
It's
And
like
what
our school systems. Sorry.
Yeah, I know we can go on forever. It's like
our school systems though, like they don't teach the right proper way to do economics, like money and budgeting.
Oh God, no, they don't know anything about relationship.
Nothing about relationships. Nothing about anything that's really applicable towards everyday fucking life. You know what I mean? Like health, like isn't even a thing, and it's just teaching you these things. I mean, aside from math and science, you know. And maybe writing, but aside from math, science, and writing, it's like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? We send our kids there, and like we could really tone down a lot of the bullshit and start in high school, especially launching our kids into ways like on how to respect women and how to, you know, like that's something men need to learn, you know?
To create men's groups and mentor groups for young men and that kind of stuff. But schools were, you know, they were based on a industrial revolution, and they were based on a model that was oppression military schools, and it was all about segregation of the ages and training them with Pavlov's, you know, principles of like ring the bell, they salivate, that kind of stuff. And it's so weird. It's worked so well that most of us we're just swimming in it. It's just like, oh, of course, my alarm goes off. I feel like shit. I'm going to get up and get out of my warm bed with my wife and go to work and kind of be a little miserable. And maybe I'm not doing something all that great. I'm working at Radio Shack or whatever.
But hey, I'll buy a new car next month.
Yeah, but I'm making the car payments, you know, and things like that. And she's got to work now too, because it isn't the 1950s. So everybody's a little miserable and off. You know, one of the great things I did for myself was became an entrepreneur so that I could get up when I wanted to.
Yeah.
And amazing health benefits from just letting my body rise up when it's ready.
Well,
right.
And this is all something that I think that first of all, being an entrepreneur is fucking awesome. It's awesome for me, but it's not awesome for everybody. And I think that something as an entrepreneur that we should try to encourage in society is allowing people to, especially in a job like mine, make schedules that work for them so that they can be the most efficient that they can for their own personal life. Like, you know, I work at 7 a.m. and end at 4:30 typically, but you know, like there's not really any reason aside from the fact that that's what we do.
Right.
We do that. You know what I mean?
I know. School always started at 8:30 in the morning. I'm like, what in the fuck?
Right.
You know, I want to sleep until at least 9 or 10, and then I'm ready kind of to go. And they've done the studies and they said, yeah, it's obvious the kids don't want to get up early. Now there's something great about getting up early too. Right. But you can train your body to do that. Everybody has the experience of waking up 5 minutes before their alarm and kind of like, oh, I get this moment, you know. Mm-hmm. But anybody who's a parent knows that getting both of you to work on time and the kids all to work at precisely, like, you can't be 5 minutes late. If you're chronically 5 minutes late, well, if you ever try to put a kid into a car seat, that can take up an easy 15 minutes that you didn't plan on, right? So you got to like plan on getting up at 4:30 in the morning to get everything together, and it often doesn't work. I used to, you know, really struggle with I have 4 kids, and it was like, getting them all off to their thing and me getting off to my thing and my wife getting off to her thing, all on perfect time, according to the clock, was just like, it was always hell, you know, and
exhausting.
And and the boss was kind of like, well, you know, you've been 5 minutes late a couple of times this month. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You know, it's like, but you'd say, I'm sorry. I need the job. Yeah.
Right.
You know, and I gave that up.
I'm not like that at all. You
but
know, like
am.
you can't, well, I don't mean different. Like that. I just mean like, I will not stay in a job because I need it. I will only stay in a job because I want it. Like,
and that's a beautiful thing. Me too. Right. Yeah. And it is, I got to admit, it's partly, you know, balls. You got to kind of like, I'll take the consequences, but it's also a privilege. You can get away with it, you know, and other people can't, talk about like third world Islam or something like that. It's like, man, you don't walk away from your situation. But, the fact that we've got a diverse problems that kind of affect our intimate relationships, that's why it becomes even more important to actually kind of spend some time learning how to do this well. Because it's without it, we do tend to like fall apart a bit, right? Single bachelors, men commit suicide so much more than women do. They really don't thrive all by themselves. There's a lot of studies that, you do better
right.
at least with a partner, and you can. And now with the new kind of marriage, where it's like, oh, like you guys have this connection where it's like, oh, you keep agreeing to do this. It's about personal growth. It's about making each other the best version of yourself that you can get. And you can have bad times and good times and connections and disconnection, but there's a bigger purpose happening of why you're together. It's not just like, oh, you make me happy, or you're providing everything for me so I can just sit around and paint. It's like, no, it's like we've transcended those, even though we still have a lot of cultural pressure around that. There's still a lot in our own psyches that kind of like, I'd love to be able to take care of somebody and say, hey, look, honey, I got this. I'm making $1 million. You just do whatever art or, rituals, whatever it is to make this place beautiful. I'd love to be able to do that. I'm an old school guy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I remember the 70s came around and I'm like, fuck yes, I don't have to do that. Yeah. My partner is going to also be like bringing in the bread and also assisting. And I no longer have to be that, king of the castle bullshit, right? Where I have to make every decision and everything I say goes and everybody's dependent on me. I was like, I didn't really want that. It's like what I wanted was an equal. I wanted a partner in this process of doing life. And so I started, having my relationships and trying to work it out. My first partner, we didn't get married. It was the 70s, right? And so we were one of the first couples to just go, oh, we don't even worry about that marriage thing. We had a son, and I went to work and she stayed home while the kid was really little, but we didn't know how to make the transition into like there was no infrastructure for us to be able to, like, for her to go to work. It meant childcare, and we didn't want to do that. And so it was like, oh, we got kind of stuck into some of the older stuff as it evolved. And, like my first son, he doesn't even call me dad. We were so advanced. We just said, oh, we don't need titles. Just call me by my name. So he's 40 now. And he calls me Bill. Right.
I think I might have. Is that the one that we met? Remember we met? Oh,
I don't know.
Shivoso's son.
You might have met Jazz or Josh. I don't know which one, but Jazz is who I'm talking about.
Yeah. It was at the very first festival when we met. It was like, I think it was like his birthday or your birthday or somebody's birthday.
Oh God. No, I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know, man.
It's
it was
very
a long
vague.
time ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a long time ago, like 6 years ago.
It's like trying to catch water in your hand, trying to remember things. You know what I mean? It's like
life is different for us. It's busy. It's full, and so that's another factor in the relationship thing. Is like, how do you manage to do all of the things we want to do in a day, and nurture a relationship? And I was just talking to a friend of mine who just got into a new relationship, and he was like, "Oh my God, how am I going to find time to do all the things I used to do? Now I got a boyfriend," and it's like all my spare time gets sort of taken up with that. It's like, I got 15 minutes. I'm going to call my boyfriend, or it's like, oh, he's spending the night again, or whatever, and it's like, shit, where would all that alone time and that time to go, okay, what's important? What do I need to do next? It's all like taken into this relationship until it meshes and you guys settle down.
That's what I was going to say. Find someone who you can do all the things that you enjoy doing. Like with Kendra and I, we produce music together. We play music together. We do podcasting together. We, the only
I still really value my alone time.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it's a
dance.
One day a week where I can just smoke weed and listen to music and like not do anything for 3 hours straight.
Yeah. And I love my
reset my mind.
Too.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, as far as, I couldn't imagine having a relationship with someone and then being like, okay, sorry, honey, I have to go play a show this weekend. I'm going to be on the podcast with Shivoso for 3 hours. And then maybe later on we can make dinner together. Or I'm going to come home exhausted at 11 and, it's like, I hope you've got dinner made and everything done.
set up. You haven't done anything all day, right? Eating bonbons. It's
Right.
like, what, that's just not realistic anymore. And it is, I like that, Kendra, you mentioned that. It's like, yes, the spaciousness is really essential. And that's one of the skills that you kind of like, one of the agreements that you want to make in a kind of a new paradigm relationship is like, how do we arrange for consensual spaciousness?
Yeah.
Consensual is different than taking space, right? Taking space is kind of aggressive, and space is infinite, right? So you take space. And it's like people use that term a lot, but I prefer consensual spaciousness because consensual, we do it together, we make an agreement about it, and it's spaciousness, not space, right? And for me, everybody has a different level of how much together time, how much apart time. And there is no set, like I couldn't say, oh, everybody needs this amount of time alone. Or, I used to get, when the kids were little, my alone time was the commute, a half an hour back and forth from work. And it was like, that was my alone time. I could play the radio I wanted to do, I could smoke a cigarette if I wanted to. I could, do anything for a half an hour.
Yeah.
All by myself, just think my own thoughts. But after that, it was like 24/7 contact with people, right?
Yeah, it's good to be
nowadays,
flexible and have that communication too. Like I remember when I first met Eric, like the third day we knew each other, we were like, we want to hang out tonight. And he was like, I kind of just want to chill with the boys. And if that's cool, I'm like, yeah, that's totally cool. Like,
yay, yeah, for sure.
Tell me that you need your space and you want, a night away. I love that.
Yeah. That's really great you guys did that early on because that's unusual.
Yeah.
Well, the first, like before Kendra and I got together, I was kind of seeing this other person for a couple of weeks. I wasn't even really seeing her, but we had hung out like every night for like 4 nights or something. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go hang out with my friends now. And she fucking freaked out. And it was it. It was it. Yeah. I never talked to her again because I was
if you think about it, roles reverse. If a guy, guys have done that to me where I'm like,
sure.
no, like, I'm going to chill tonight. And they get really possessive, aggressive, like have those expectations.
They get concerns. There's a vulnerability there of losing the person. Now, of course, we have to identify where you are in the arc of a relationship when these, spaciousness issues occur, because that changes over time. When you first get together, for most people, the falling in love thing is you just melt into each other, right? You're just, you're all about it. And that's what the whole genome does is like makes you forget about yourself so that you end up mating with this person like pretty constantly until they get pregnant. And that usually takes just a few weeks or a few months at the most, right? You got a couple of ovulatory cycles. And if you haven't gotten pregnant by then, something's wrong according to your DNA. It starts to go, maybe this isn't it, It's like I'm not getting the results I want DNA wise, right?
Interesting, yeah.
And so then,
biology so much.
as the months go on, the neurotransmitters begin to drop, and the automatic passion begins to sort of, and you start to kind of come back to yourself. Usually, you have your first fight around 6 months, the first kind of real disagreement. Now, you might still like gloss over it because you really like that, merged feeling. But after you've been at that for a year or a year and a half or 2 years, those neurotransmitters have completely dropped, and being merged starts to get really weird and uncomfortable. And you start to have these like pushbacks and fights and sort of bids for autonomy, right? Which often come off as something kind of aggressive or avoidant, insecure stuff. And people don't realize what's going on. It's for their internal experience. They're like, I'm just kind of like sick of you now, or I'm not as turned on. And people get to that place 2 years and they go, I'm just not in love with you anymore. And they don't realize they never were in love with the person. What they were was in like passion, in limerence. They were drawn together to breed a child, which takes about, to get a child up and running takes about 2 to 3 years. And it takes a dyad at least to do that. Mom needs support. The masculine or somebody else needs to bring food, make sure she's comfortable. Everything's safe for her because she's not mobile. He's really tied down with the breastfeeding, and the kid can't walk and things like that. And then 2 to 3 years later, kid's up and running, eating solid food. The rest of the culture, the rest of the community, family is taking care of the kid. It's not a full-time job. Immediately the hormones drop and everybody's eyes go up and they start looking around for another breeding partner, because that's what you want is diversity. You don't want to breed with the same person over and over again. You want to keep mixing the genes up. And that's hardware, right? That's, 200,000 years old. And we experience it here in our time as like romance, love, passion, get together. Oh my God, you're my one forever. I just want to be close to you all the time. Just like these little pushbacks and these frictions start to happen. And then 2 years later, you're like, I don't love you anymore. Boom, we broke up, right? So you got these 2 to 5 year sort of organic relationships that aren't done consciously, knowing the arc of a relationship, how the actual hardware will drive the relationship. And there's variations on this. None of these dates or times are fixed. But if you know that in advance, you can go, wow, I'm having these really intense feelings with you. And I know I'm a little nutty, so I'm not going to make any lifetime promises right now, but you are pretty interesting to me. And I'm going to look at some of your other attributes beside the fact that you're all, great DNA. I got chemistry with you. You smell right. You're sexy. I can't keep my hands off you. That's good stuff. But it's not a relationship yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to look at some other aspects of that person. And we do that right away. We start going, let me share my history with you. Let me share my heart. Like our ego kind of goes down quite a bit for those of us who are open, right? And the more open you are in that time, the more comfortable everybody feels. You get to know each other. And God, you're scrabbling after this comfort and safety with each other, which is, as soon as you have it, you've pretty much ended the exciting part of the relationship, and what's going to keep it sustained? There's no longer the hormones. You may not even have bred a child because you got birth control and it wasn't really what your intention was. So you become boyfriend and girlfriend. You move in together because it's economically more sound. And you don't even know why you're starting to have these feelings of like, oh God, they came in the room. Now I'm not feeling too excited, or actually I'm feeling a little impacted and overdone. I need space, right? So you start from the beginning. If you know these patterns, you can say, okay, we're going to need enough spaciousness so I miss you a little bit pretty consistently. And I know me, I'm willing to, flex around it and experiment, but let's try a day off, or let's try 2 days off a week, or let's live in separate, dwellings and be able to like visit each other, even though it's a committed relationship, so that we have that kind of like, how can I miss you if you won't go away feeling. It's like, wow, honeymoon relationships, they're great. People don't like long distance relationships, but man, nothing's better than a week away from your beloved and you're just like, man, you are so hot to be together.
Agreed.
That's just kind of human relating. I found that out with my kids when I finally divorced, and I had 2 of the kids and my ex-wife had 2 of the kids. And then we do exchange, and my daughters would come visit me. And it was like, wow, just having a week on, week off kind of thing with them was like, it was always really good. I was like, by the time the week was done, it was like, great. Now I can lower my, stress level. I can just focus on the guys, the boys with me, and they go back to their mom. And then when they're coming back, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see you. Yeah. Right. And this is the same way with your intimate partners. Like, you want to arrange it so that you're always a little hungry. It's like not quite fully saturated with that person. And that keeps the romantic thing going, kind of keeps the hormones going. And you can keep that shit going for a long time. In other words, that's a hack, right?
Yeah.
And keeping romance going. Just one that may or may not work for everybody. Right. Personality, alchemy, conditions all affect how these hacks might or might not work. But they're ideas that people don't even think of. Consensual spaciousness. Let's build that in so I can miss you a little bit, right?
Yeah. I think that it's a really weird thing to try to like put 2 lives together and make them one in a way.
Yeah.
And
it's the hardest thing you'll ever do.
For us, it's really easy, but I mean, I don't really understand why. I mean, it's like, I just can't imagine it with anybody else, which is probably why we are together. But
right.
Well, it hasn't always been easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah. And in the future, I mean,
there'll probably be things.
I feel like we were blessed enough to have information given to us early on and had the tools and the tricks and the tips.
No, it really is though.
Well,
I mean,
and with the internet and
but I mean, he like that was like the first year, and going to that workshop, I think taught us so much about how to communicate and just how to be totally on.
Yeah,
you know,
I feel
and-
pretty blessed though.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are pretty blessed. You're up there in the super couples, right? And it doesn't mean you're never gonna hit easy street.
Right.
Because
Right.
the whole point of self-actualization, self-realization is evolution. You're going to become a different person at 40 than you were at
Oh
30.
yeah.
There's no way around it, you know, and your needs
Yeah.
might be different. You can change your agreements. You might still be together and you might not.
Right.
How do we accommodate a world that includes international travel, that includes jobs that pull us away from each other for months at a time? We don't live in a little village. We aren't stuck with just foot traffic or horses to get somewhere.
Right. And
Yeah.
the sea
You
is
know,
very big.
Yeah, marriage has to change to accommodate that. And it's a lot. And yet it leads to this incredible opportunity for these self-actualized human beings to be out there in the world doing their service from a place of like wholeness and happiness. Because a lot of our problems in the world all root down to the disconnect from our essential selves, our inability to feel supported by our culture and by our intimate relationships in actually being the best that humans can be. And we have this one window here in the 21st century to really like pop through to that next level. And it's going to happen in these kind of relationships. Some people are very much good on their own. They're singles. But I think that's the exception rather than the rule. People who are just not going to be really ever really be into sex or relationship or wanting that in their lives. So if you're going to want it, do it like a fucking pro.
Yeah.
You know, stop being a rookie and just hoping it's going to work.
Yeah, it's interesting how we educate ourselves in anything that we're interested in, really. But for some reason, the thing that we do the most, which is
the reason, like we said earlier, this is
Right.
the reason we exist on
right.
the planet.
Yeah.
We're mammals who are trying to make more mammals and have this social thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all about. And we do it so badly now.
Yeah.
That, you know, not only divorce, but murder and rape and
I was just gonna
all
say,
the
I mean,
weird shit that goes on.
And look at social media and now it's and it's like with social media now, everybody has constant connection with people, but it's not real connection.
It's not real authentic connection.
And so they're displaying what they want to look like or what they want to be. And then on top of that, they're like surrounded by thousands of people virtually, right? Because you're scrolling through feeds. So you're seeing all these emotional updates and all these updates on people's lives. And so you're literally in your pocket, you have 1,000 people or 2,000 people in your pocket just hanging out at all times. And but you don't have the ability to go out and have a real face-to-face conversation with anybody. And it's really scary in a way because we're losing this ability to socialize, and it's because of social media, which is hilarious.
It is kind of funny. It's like it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, it has a lot of great benefits. You know, I'm not trying to say everything's bad with it or anything, but
no, we're always going to do trade-offs, right, on everything. We now live, in my opinion, in a cult of personality. It used to be character. When you meet somebody and you work with them and you live with them and you have to interact and kind of depend on each other, your character comes through. Are you dependable? Are you honest? Are you real? You know. But when you just have these slip by things where you meet somebody at the coffee shop and they're behind the counter, or you see somebody online, your character doesn't matter.
Right.
But what you project as your personality, which is what persona means. It literally means mask. That you speak out of. It's an old Greek term.
Oh wow.
It's like, oh well, if we just put up a good front, that's good enough. And nobody's making us build our character, right?
Yeah.
That has to happen within the context of actual face-to-face friction with others in an intimate kind of thing. It's like we've all had boyfriends or girlfriends that were like, wow, now that I got to know you, you actually you don't have great character. You're kind of fucked up. But you had a great front. You wore the right clothes. You had the right this. You attracted me with this charming personality. But underneath, you were just a train wreck, right?
Have you ever
because
read,
your parents were abusive, or you had adverse childhood experience. Who knows, right? It's not like, oh, I'm blaming you, but I'm like, how can I know you? How can I possibly know you just online, right? Online dating. There you go, right there. It's like, wow, it's super superficial. It's cosmetic, and it can work, but you're dealing with personality, not character.
Have
People
you
can
read
say, "Oh,
Tribe?
I'm honest," and then it's like, "Well, prove it. Let me hang out with you for 6 weeks, or let me I'll just give you $1,000 in cash, and I'll be back in 6 months and see if it's still there."
Right.
It's like, let me test your character.
Yeah.
So, there's dating for you. It's really like, sure, you want to, whatever attracts you to them. But the first thing you do is start going, I'm checking your character, and I'm displaying my honest, true character as best I can. And it takes a while for that to unfold. People don't show their character until a certain trigger comes up. You don't know what a person's going to do during an earthquake until it happens.
Have you read Tribe?
Yes, I have.
Okay, cool. Because this is something. What? Huh? Have you read it yet?
No.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because this is what we were talking about, and this totally relates to this abundance of people with the lack of relationship and real connection. And with the tribe thing, it's like for eons we needed to depend on our neighbor, which was 10 feet away in a hut, for maybe food that night. Maybe, we don't have food tonight, but we know that you have extra food. So, and then tomorrow we'll get you back. And so it's like, we needed all of these things. And it had to do with like poverty, because back then nobody except for the kings or whatever were wealthy. But now, everybody has a roof over their head, shelter, too much almost, you know what I mean? And too big of houses with too big of lots. And then food is too easy. We can just literally call it and have it brought to us. And if we want clothes, we can have it brought to us by.
We don't need character. We could be Donald Trump and be president of the United States.
Perfect example.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's a persona. That's a persona that covers up a huge narcissistic, that poor fella, he's a psychopath.
So how do we change that though? How do we get people to start having real authentic connections when they communicate?
I'm so glad you asked. That's the $1 million question, right? And it does start with our intimate relationships, especially with women demanding character in their men, not attributes, not persona, not, how much money do you earn? Character, right?
Right.
No bullshit. My legs will not open up to somebody who is not displaying character, right? And I will vet you for it. And that's what I teach in my dating classes is like, how do you vet both men and women? How do you vet someone for character on a very short date when what they're going to be doing is projecting their best stuff? I mean, I do it. Everybody does. They wear their nice clothes. They get all made up. They try to be polite. They pull out the chair, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And is that really part of your character? Or are you putting on an act in order to get something, right? And so you got to hack through the act by asking really good questions and listening really carefully, watching body language, becoming a little more skilled about that. And, you just filter people right out really quickly who don't have character if you're not going in there leading with your needs.
Right.
People are lonely. They've got touch needs. They need validation. They need support. Now, these are all
they've never been taught though. That's the other thing. I mean, they've never been taught how to even consider what they need, because maybe they're like, for example, I have a friend, she's a female, and her parents have always taught her that she needs a guy that needs to be successful and have a good job. And, I think that it's brought them into this situation where like the good guy isn't good enough because he might not have the fucking $150,000 a year job, and now you're getting these, it's like there's a checklist but they're not the right checklist.
Exactly. It's not the right checklist.
Yeah.
Sure. And so people are dissatisfied with their experience. They might even get married and, be able to have a relationship for a few years. And then just this huge dissatisfaction or even bad things start to happen. Right. And you're like, well, I didn't fall in love with you for the right reasons. I fell in love with you for the ones that my culture and my parents, the ones I kind of inculcated, unless parents or somebody is teaching people when they're young how to do this, and so I don't care what age you are. you can learn how to do this vetting process to create something, what I call inspirational relationships. That's what we're really looking for. That's how I condense it down. It's like, no, we don't want just safe relationships. We don't want just sexy ones. We want something that inspires our life. And if you kind of go from that and say, okay, I'm heading toward this high thing, how do I work for that? You know, what do I do in order to create the opportunity for that? And how do I not allow myself to settle for less because I'm super hungry, right? If you're crawling through the desert, you know, say you've been single a lot of your life, or the last 2 years, you're divorced, you haven't had sex in a couple of years, you know, then anything that comes along, if you're walking through the desert and you see water, it doesn't matter if it's piss, you're going to drink it, right? It's like, oh, right. Oops, I shouldn't have drank that. Now I'm sick, right? But I was desperate. I had to do what I had to do. So part of it is like being able to hold on.
Your friend right now that Kendra has a friend that's kind of going through something like that as well. And it's really hard to see.
Oh, it's everywhere.
I met someone online showing some very extreme red flags of just very like not good ones, like aggressive, controlling,
right?
Just not very genuine. But it's okay because he said he was sorry. I don't know. Like it's scary.
It's super scary. You know,
but she has a kid. She's struggling. You know, like I see why she feels like she needs it.
And and the amount of time that you have to put into finding a good mate, that's a whole other time consuming thing, right? I mean,
that's why being super efficient about it is really important. I came up with a series of like games and questions and things like that, and kind of containers you can set up in a dating situation that are really gonna, you know, filter for that really quickly. And also, so you can be really efficient.
Can you explain some? Can you explain some for the listeners? Like, is there any?
For instance, there's this really easy game that you can do, and the thing is, you set up a container. Say you met somebody on Tinder or online, and you say, "Hey, let's have a coffee date. Let's just, you know, see each other."
People on Tinder have coffee dates? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's fucking then figure it out later. You know.
Okay,
nothing wrong with that. Is that if that's all you expect? But what happens is, of course, people do develop long-term relationships through these connections. When you mate with somebody, when you have sex with them, you've let them in. Yeah. They become more important than somebody else, and they're more available, bird in the hand. And especially because we feel like dating and the search is, like you said, Eric, time-consuming, expensive, hard. It's like super scarce. Like, where are the good men? Yeah. You know, where are the good women? Kind of stuff. And it's all true. It seems kind of scarce, but wow, everybody's looking. It's like, how do we create opportunities? So that's another part of it. It's like, how do I create opportunities to meet people? But once you meet them, you can do this thing of like expressing your need for honesty and upfrontness and authenticity and transparency. Hey, I love to play this game where we get to be 100% honest with each other. Would you like to do that? It's consensual. You're like, hey, you want to play? And, you know, the guy or the woman is kind of like, that sounds kind of risky, but sure, you're cute. I've already invested in showing up. So yeah, I'll play the game. And you say, okay, here's how it goes. I get to ask you a question about anything I want to know about you, and you have to answer it 100% honestly. And then you get to ask me a question, and then I get to ask you another question, and we do this 3 times. How's that sound to you? And everybody goes, ah! Right. Okay, sure. You know, I'll be brave, or, you know, they're filtered out. Oh no, I'm not going to do that, man. That's just too weird. And you're like,
and you just say, bye-bye.
Yeah, peace. You know, it's like, thanks for the coffee. Right.
Right.
But most people will say, yeah. And then you say, okay, well, what do I want to ask? Not like, what's your favorite color? Right. Yeah. That's a nice entry one. It's like, they go, whew, that's safe. Right. You know? But then you're like, okay, well, tell me how your last relationship ended. You know, it's like, oh, how's your relationship with your mom? Really? You know, or your dad? And watch the body language. Watch them, like, you know, look up to the left or the right. Once you start learning some of the body language stuff, you'll see them like scrabbling or just going, oh, I got no problem with that question. I've been thinking about it a lot, you know, and I'm really glad to tell you how that all went down. It wasn't great. I may have made some mistakes. Do they sit there and blame the other person? you know, and make it about they're okay.
Right.
And the
That's the
fucked
scariest
up.
thing when people start to do
It's
that.
like, I'd be interested to hear what your, former partner might say about that, but it's really about just putting people on the spot, but consensually, not aggressively, not like, I'm going to aggressively vet you. I'm going to challenge you. And this is not going to be any fun. It's like, man, if it's not fun, you're doing it wrong. If you're not laughing, you're doing it wrong. Right. And you want a partner. The number one characteristic that men and women are looking for in their partner is they laugh at each other's jokes.
Really?
Yeah. It's like, wow, that's a huge thing about compatibility, right?
Yeah.
You get me. You think I'm funny, you laugh at my jokes and stuff, and you're entertained by me, because we do want to be happy with the person we're with, right? So you make it fun, right? And this sounds pretty heavy, but it can be super fun with the right people, and the wrong people will bonk right out.
Yeah.
They had a front, they wanted to get laid, they had an agenda. Narcissists can be extremely good liars.
That's what I was just going to say. How do you vet the sociopaths? Like Kendra and I kind of had a situation like a few years ago where there was someone that was just really good at manipulating the situation,
Yeah.
And you gotta check that. Is like, watch how they move around everybody. Are they manipulating the situation? Don't let their charm or their money or their looks or anything, what you need from them is what's making you vulnerable. That's what I talk about when leading with your needs. Yes, we have authentic needs for touch and sex and all that. And a lot of times that we're desperately starving for that. But you got to be able to learn how to hold on to yourself. That's character. It's like, it's you ever hear the marshmallow test they do with kids? They put a marshmallow in front of a little kid, and
oh yeah, the 3 and the 1, and you tell them
delayed gratification. You get
that's
2.
a frontal lobe test, right?
Right, and so you can develop that character 2 ways. One, you can kind of like be that way. It's just your natural character, or you learn it through adversity.
Yeah.
You make the fucking mistake of like grabbing the fucking thing, eating it, and then realizing I don't get any more, or things didn't turn out the way I wanted to. I didn't get the second one. All right, I'm going to learn to hold on to myself. And this is what dating takes. You got to learn how to hold on to yourself, which is a lot of self-work.
Now that is something that, like, I mean, just that test that you're talking about is a prefrontal cortex test, and the prefrontal cortex doesn't even mature in most people until they're like 25, and it's the most evolved part of the brain. So you have to, like, most people don't have, I mean, there's people that have a lot of prefrontal cortex, activity, but there's like obviously the average, and then there's people that are below the average. And so it's really interesting when you look at it from that perspective, because like prefrontal cortex is long-term planning and trying to hold out for the long term. Like
that's one character, it's an aspect of character that we want to like look for.
And that's really difficult for people, though. I mean, myself included. That's probably one of my biggest problems. And now that I've taken all these biology classes and started to understand the prefrontal cortex a little bit, it's made me really analyze how I handle those kinds of situations. And
that's exactly it.
When I fuck up,
you're evolving. You're evolving through knowledge, right?
Slowly,
through adversity. We're slow learners and stuff. But giving someone these patterns, and then also giving them the framework around these neurobiological changes that can happen, and recognizing that even the neocortex of the brain itself is a constantly evolving and growing thing. It's a plastic thing. You can actually, you're not stuck with any of your patterns. You're not stuck with any of your traumas. You're not stuck with fucking anything. You have a basic genetic fingerprint, your genome, that you're limited by. But other than that, you're a pretty plastic thing, and you can learn new techniques, new ways of being, new ways of dating and mating that give you the results you actually want. That's called growing up, right? It's maturing. And you can do this either, through adversity and, keep trying the same damn thing over and over and getting the same results, or you go to a class, you talk to somebody like me, you get an expert, or you model yourself after somebody else who's successfully doing it. The funny thing about this dating technique stuff is that by the time you get really good at it, you don't need it anymore. What you need is you need to go to the next level, which is relating, right? It's being an intimate relationship, because you scored, right? So people don't want to invest a whole lot into learning this. But the thing that what you just mentioned and what I wanted to mention is that this self-work, this idea that, okay, I'm not a complete and whole human being automatically.
Yes.
I know I had stuff happen in my life. I know from the results of my life that there's certain neuroses or patterns that aren't working for me. What am I doing to address those? Am I just staying home watching TV and in Facebook, or am I actually going out and getting therapy or doing classes or educating myself to be a better person myself before I even try to engage or in the process of engaging with another person? Everybody wants to date upward. In other words, one of the things that we do is we always look for attributes that we admire or wish for ourselves. Yeah. We want somebody who's got more money, who's better looking than us, who's got better character than us, so that we can kind of pull ourselves up with them, right? It can get all the way to the neurotic, rescue me stuff. But a lot of times it's just, hey, I want a partner that I admire, that when they speak, I'm like, wow, you're so fucking intelligent. I'm super impressed, right? All of those attributes, we want to be developing our own character and not depending on that to be automatically there, so that when our potential partner, they also admire us. Because there you got this really weird dichotomy. We both want to admire, both want to date upward, but how do you do that? One person's got to be above and below.
Admire each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, character is a multitudinous thing. Some people are going to be really good at, say, business and persuading people and things like that. Other people may be really good at nurturing and taking care. And you go, oh, well, you got this and I got that. Nice. We can balance each other out as long as we're aware that that's why we're doing it.
Scared me.
A lot of it is self-awareness, and that kind of stuff. Hi, puppy.
Bruno is in the frame.
For sure. I love that we're all wearing black.
I know.
Like, we are
just so cool. And the dog is like right on to the tip with the fashion tonight.
Yep. Yeah. He's always on it. He's got the gold and the black. I don't know if you can see.
Oh yeah. He's
a bit of a brindle.
Yeah, for sure. He's got the Saints colors, New Orleans, right?
Yes. Yeah. So
I just wanted to bring that in as like we start our relationships and we build character through relationships. It is a kind of a character or self-actualization, self-improvement thing. And going into it with that in mind changes why we're getting into the relationship. Mm-hmm. And we have to get past some of our basic needs. Now, that's tough. That's really tough. We do need love and touch. It would be great if, say, doctors could prescribe lovemaking as a way. I mean, think about the stress level and the depression level that would drop if you'd had a Wednesday night, drop in by a professional who came in, cuddled with you. We have professional cuddlers. We have all sorts of different ways, but not everybody can access that. Yeah, it's just not generally available.
And also, I mean, we've talked about this in previous podcasts as well, about how it, unfortunately, because of some of the boxes that we've created in relationships, it's like maybe you're not getting that kind of intimacy out of your relationship, and you should bring someone else into it and not be afraid to have your husband go have an intimate connection with somebody else and then bring it home,
it'd be nice if we worked that way, but there's a lot. It's complicated, right?
Yeah. If it was through a professional service rather than just like going on Tinder or something, if it was like, okay, this is exactly what this is, there's nothing else.
Right. It's not cheating if it's consensual, however you do that. The necessity of it is real. But, single people, married people, there's all sorts of different levels of need for, that's a huge one right there, is sexual fulfillment. Yeah. That's only been since the 1950s.
Right.
That was actually important. 40s maybe, post World War II, that suddenly it's like, hey, women like sex and we demand our marriage gives us sexual fulfillment. Yeah. It's not just to make babies, right? It's like, oh yeah, we get to have orgasms too and pleasure. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a new thing, and we still got a lot of inhibitions in our Puritan society against things that could solve or help ameliorate those issues. And I'm certainly not saying, oh, we need to just revamp the whole thing, but we can certainly start opening the conversation up around how do we balance these things out with when two people have committed to each other and they want to be monogamous with each other, but they have different sexual level needs, right? Touch needs. Yeah. How do you negotiate that or deal with that without, being something creative, right? It's like, oh, do we bring in another person? Is there a professional? Is maybe just, platonic massages? Maybe that can help take care of some of that pressure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so many marriages break up around money, sex. Those are like the two big ones that really, really do them in, because we and personal growth.
Right.
I'm just not able to grow with you, so I'm out. Right.
Yeah.
It's a whole new game, and we do need to come up with some creative solutions. People like you and I, we can think outside the box, but not everybody can or even wants to. Right.
I just think that we talked about this in a podcast before, and I was saying that prostitution should be legalized everywhere, because if prostitution was a thing, and I mean, I'm not being funny with this either, if prostitution was a thing, then a husband and a wife who are struggling maritally, and the husband just wants to fuck, he doesn't want to have sex, he doesn't want to make love, he wants to go fuck a freak or something like that.
He wants to have an experience. He needs something.
He needs something outside, something fresh and something different and something unique. I mean, that could be available for a fee and then never again. And it would have zero. I mean, as long as it was mutually understood between the two parties, then it would be
mutually understood and goes
consensual and necessary. I mean, Europe, Australia, these places, that's all legal. Nevada, it's legal, although it's still pretty down pressured. But in Australia, Craigslist is just full of people who are sexual surrogates. They're prostitutes or doing sacred healing, or even obviously unsacred healing. It's just like whatever you want to play with is available, but there's social sanctions still. It's a Christian
have a conversation. I know that therapists, you're supposed to be able to go in there and have a conversation and just be completely honest and open, but there's something about that setting that just doesn't feel right. I think
it's maybe not quite as whole. There's a lot of power dynamics that have to be taken care of in a therapeutic situation, which keeps things from. That's why we got so many problems in the tantra world. It's like, wow, that's a much leakier and more dangerous container that psychologists and counselors won't go into, because it's a meat grinder, people's sexuality and things like that. But it's not getting addressed very well because of that. And I'm not advocating one solution over the other, but we do need to get creative about it.
Right.
We need to recognize the basic and real human needs for these kind of things, and that the way our culture of isolation and separation and competition is not serving for that, and in fact, it's killing us. We're killing the planet. We're overrunning ourselves with people or guns and shit like that. It's just like that is all rooted in this dissatisfaction with the way we feel in our bodies and ourselves, and it starts to need to be addressed, really.
And you seek out dopamine hits from little things like coffee or cigarettes or whatever it is.
Porn or whatever. Porn's the number one $1 billion industry. It's right behind the military for making money, because it's at least a shadow of addressing this need, right? And it's horrifically has consequences, but at least it's there. That was never there when I was a kid. It was like it wasn't available for kids. There's another whole can of worms. Like, why would kids want to be exposed to that particular kind of worldview around male and female relations without any kind of ever watching people actually make love, right? It's like, wow, they never get to see their parents actually do a loving act, which would be pretty weird. But they don't see it in movies. They don't see it anywhere. There's still the fade to black, but there it is in porn. And it's always really domineering and disconnected. They're not connecting with each other.
That's where a lot of us are getting our sex education from.
Sure. And it's out there. There's actually really great porn that's out there where the two people are actually in love and they're really having a great time, and they're playing and they're laughing and it's like real, right? But it's such, where's somebody going to find that, out of the plethora of shitty shit that's out there, really bad, misogynistic, horrific stuff. And then there's the addictive quality to it and all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
And it's there, it's like, wow, it's changed my sexual life. It's changed the sexuality of the culture. It's an influence, but we're not really grabbing a hold of this thing with our consciousness. We're just letting capitalistic drives and our base drives kind of run this. We're getting used by the system rather than using the system. And that's what I really want to do with people, is empower them around relating, not make them more dependent on each other or more dependent on me or another system. I want people who want to be empowered around their sexuality, around their relating, around their intimacy, and around their lifelong partnerships, rather than being just a victim of their own mind, victim of their programming, victim of their experiences and the culture. And being a victim is really what the culture is all about. It's how we make money off people. Yeah. You don't feel good enough, get your eyebrows plucked. Mm-hmm. You're a victim, right? You don't drive the right car. You certainly don't look like that movie star, so, but we'll plump you and flump you if you spend enough money, right. And you can fake it. And who cares about your character as long as you look good, Yeah. And so it's, like I said, we're kind of getting into the rabbit hole of this whole thing, but as you can see, it always fractals outward. And I try to bring it back down to something really practical, something that is doable now for people in the situation they're in now. And I have an ideal. I know what would be wonderful culture to live in. It just ain't there, right? And so what can you do now?
Better. I mean,
what can you do today to get your dating better? What can you do today to create more healthy intimacy in your relationship with the proper amount of spaciousness? How do you talk about these things? How do you keep something together long enough so that you actually do the growth rather than just bailing out as soon as things start to get a little funky and they don't feel like the ideal happily ever after relationship? People bail out pretty quick, A lot of times they should, but really, I mean, my clients, I encourage them. I don't even use the word breakup anymore.
Right.
Because if you've done the vetting, if you've done the energetic work of when you let somebody in, then there is no pushing them out. There's simply finding right relation with them. Maybe they're not your partner, but they're your fucking best friend.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're part of your support network for the rest of your life. Why, unless there's real abuse or, chemical dependency or some really bad issues where somebody's in danger on some level, then why break up? Why not just evolve the relationship? It's like, oh, your life direction and my life direction are different. I love you so much. I want you to go. Yeah. So that means we won't be living together. Maybe we won't see each other that much. Maybe we'll have other partners, but I still love you forever. I'll be there for you. I'll call you up,
Yeah. It's healthy.
And I can't teach this stuff.
Ended it.
Yeah. Just like continue to change and let it evolve.
Yeah.
And, the important thing for me was to actually do this stuff rather than just think about it. And so that's how my life is. It's like I haven't broken up with anybody in 10 years.
Yeah.
Right? And any partners I have need to accept that. And, I've explored polyamory and monogamy and things like that. And I'm really just a monogamish person.
Yeah.
But if I'm single, as long as they're safe and it's all consensual, then you can have multiple lovers and things like that.
Yeah.
And they all become part of my network. It's like, if I've let them in that close, I'm not going to push them out unless they're really toxic, really in trouble or something. And it just doesn't happen anymore. I've become really good at collecting it. So I want to teach what I can do, not what I think I can do and not what I think is possible, but actually is. So that's kind of my thing is I go out there and do these dating things and I do these relationship living together and working it out and the conversations and the patterns. I've experimented with all of it. And then I can offer it to people and say, yeah, I've done this. It works, and that's important to me. Otherwise it just feels academic, and it's sort of trying to cookie cutter something into other people's lives that is far more complex than that,
I mean, I would hope if Eric and I ever decided to part ways, I know we would still be like friends and best friends.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that
call his dad, and I'd still be best friends with his sister. Like he'd still be my family.
I think if we ever broke up or whatever, or evolved the relationship, as you're saying, I really, and I'm not just saying this, I truly feel like we would probably still live together. And then if we ever had to have, other partners or something, they would have to just be understanding of the fact that we live together and we're best friends. I just can't.
It's like the idea that you're open to the idea. Right,
exactly.
And that was never really an option before. In fact, we still do. Most everybody just breaks up, and they go through a pattern that's really, really common. It's like, well, we have to split up our friends and we take sides. We can't stand to see them happy and with someone else.
That's so
it's a
sad.
betrayal. Even like 2 years later, it's a betrayal if you manage to like find happiness with someone else. I hate you and I hate them too, you know, and it's like, we're going to cut the dog in half. We'll tear the kids apart. I don't give a fuck about your happiness anymore because I never really did love you. I just wanted you to fulfill my needs and you didn't. And now I feel betrayed.
Right.
It's like,
and that's because you're
true,
not, well, and it's also because these people go into everybody, not these people, but everybody goes into relationships not being entirely filled themselves. Like they haven't done the work on themselves yet to be a whole person. And
as whole as they can be.
Yeah. Then they start to depend on the other person to fill those other like little patches in themselves, it seems like. And that's like, for me with health, it's like, I think that that's something that is super crucial. Like I have to constantly be on it with health. And if I don't, I'm not a full person. And then I start to depend on Kendra for happiness in other ways because I'm not being healthy and happy.
Right. Yeah. It's like that bit of self-care. And I don't want to oversimplify these things and make them black and white because
of course not.
It's really complex to.
Yeah. There's so much nuance in everything. There should never be black and white. Black and white is the devil.
Blanket solution for anybody, to work this out. But the idea of changing the language from breaking up to evolving and the thing of like teaching people, young people, old people, anybody who's single, the beginning is the seed crystal of your whole relationship. So your intention and the way you set up the whole meeting and the connection and things like that is so crucial to what's going to come out of that. And to know like you guys will always be part of each other's network and always be there. That's family.
Yeah.
It's like people you can call up and say, hey, I'm having a baby. And you're like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Or come to my wedding, or I've got this like cancer and I'm fucking in trouble, or, hey, I'm going to Taiwan. You want to meet me over there? It's like the possibilities are endless. I used to break up with people and it was a drag because I'd lose all the investment I had into that person.
Right.
Yeah.
All of the
and that's
network.
why a lot of people stay together in unhappy relationships too, is because of the investment. Where if they evolve the relationship, like what you're saying, they would be able to continue with that investment, but also get the things that they need out of maybe a partner, or whether it might be
their sovereignty.
Exactly, like you're saying, sovereignty. Like go travel the fucking world with a backpack and not be so constrained to have a mortgage and a house and and a partner or whatever for the time being, and then maybe link up later. I don't know.
Yeah, I think monogamous committed relationships are like a religious vow. It really is like a commitment to renunciating a lot of other things to get the benefits of being with someone long enough and hard enough to grow, right? Because it's hard to grow, it's painful, and that person in your face is going to make you grow. You want to pick that person who's a worthy opponent. This is John Wellwood, who wrote Love and Awakening. That's his term, is a worthy opponent, which I kind of, I get it. My whole metaphor of marriage as a dojo, a place where you practice being a better human being through all of the things that come up in life and in marriage and in being with somebody. There's nothing more valuable than that, right? Or it's kind of the fastest growth path you can go, other than renunciate. I mean, you can go travel the world and you can do this and you can do that, but really that crucible of being with one person for a long time, that's going to like hone off all of the weird edges that you have, all of the misunderstandings. It's going to be right in your face. And if that person's a worthy opponent, they're going to do it with you. You encourage it, step out of the dojo, recover, get back into the dojo and keep working it, and I want to give people practices that they can do in that dojo that actually work, rather than, let's just try to keep reinventing the wheel like nobody's ever done this before. And of course, I'm not the only one. It's like there's a lot of people out there who are willing and able to guide people into these next level relationships, but engaging them, finding us and actually engaging us, it seems to be difficult for people. There's an uphill battle for that. So, I want to do these workshops where it's easy, it's inexpensive for people to come and get inspired, learn some of these ideas I have, try them out, get feedback, start working this into the culture and weaving it in. And so it becomes normalized. that people are doing relationship and interpersonal education as a matter of course, because that's what we really, really want.
We should, I mean, I know that we're live right now and recording this, but we should seriously maybe talk about doing a smaller version of the reboot camp idea.
Absolutely.
If Kandra's coworker is serious about letting us rent the Quonset hut from her, maybe we can do something in the next few months, like in the spring, where we do like an empowerment weekend and have.
That'd be great. I've got some co-teachers that would love to come
That's
out.
What I was just gonna say.
I'd love to come out. Yeah. I've got some friends who are both teachers and DJs. Cool. You're a teacher and a DJ. It's like, so we got music and things like that. We can make it fun, and we can make it, just 4 hours long and not too big elaborate, but really start getting it out there, because that's what I'm all about. That's what 2019 is all about for me. It's like time for me to go out there and get big and, get noticed and go, hey. And I want to thank you both, because here's this golden opportunity. You're going to put this out there, and everybody on your list is going to get to see my face and hear about Intimacy Arts and what I do, and more, not just for me, but for all these other co-teachers that I know. Right. We're all kind of like looking for ways to connect to, because man, I go out there and I say, oh, I'm a relationship coach in any social situation. And people go, oh my God, I've got one of those and got problems. Right. And they start telling me all about their stuff and wanting me to give them the advice and the guidance that they need. And I'm like, I just give it, right? I'm just like, I can't help myself. But at the same time, it's like, let's start doing larger groups, because it's such a necessity. Right. It's like people are hungry to have the kind of relationships that we talk about and we idealize. And I believe there's a way to do it. It's just like, it ain't easy. There's no formula or pill. It's going to take some certain things: personal growth, investment in the self, vetting, beginnings, or if you're in the middle of a relationship, do the corrective patterns that are going to fix that codependence and the places where you're glitching. And it can totally be done. I'm ready to go, man.
Yeah, I know. I have so many like ideas that I really want to start enacting, just with this kind of, or along these lines, just because for me, I feel like I am noticing these patterns in myself where I need to continuously educate myself on things to keep myself sharp and continue growing, or else I get stuck in these vicious cycles. And I'm pretty self-aware. So it's like, I can't even imagine what people that don't even consider doing that are dealing with on their day-to-day basis, drinking 4 fucking energy drinks a day and just going to their 9 to 5 and whatever. Right. And so I'm just like, my goal is, and in the next couple of years, you know what I mean, to really try to like build up something where, there's these continuous things that people can go to and just basically reprogram the mind in a positive way. It's like, I was talking to my mother today, and I was telling her that I would love to try going to like a Navy SEAL boot camp just for the experience of it. But then I was like, okay, so I want to do that just for the experience. But what would be even better is if that was all of that craziness with a bunch of positivity, instead of, just you're a weak little bastard, just whatever. Right. And so to try to like get these things where it is tough. It's going to be a week possibly, or 5 days or 3 days or whatever it is, of just extreme conditions where you're mentally at the brink of breaking, possibly in a positive way. And then you're with these people that are also going through that same exact experience. And at the end of it, you create these bonds with these people, and it's a tribe essentially, right? Yeah. It's this tribe that we were talking about earlier. So, I mean, that's kind of, I don't know. It's just like, I'm really glad that you and I have linked up in this way, because I think that the podcasting is going to be able to really like, it's all a part. It's like this like chain link on a bike, it's all coming together to try to push forward. And I think that it's really cool that you and I have really good chemistry, because, it's not very often that
mutual enthusiasm, it's like inspiration to do these kind of things. Because like I said, this is the podcasts are just the crystal, face-to-face boot camps, consistent exposure. People's suffering is what leads them to me. Right. People don't come to me because they're happy. they come to me because they're not happy. And that's kind of a hard part of the job is I see mostly unhappy people. But at the same time, that's what we'll bring them in. And we want to make it available to even those people who do the 4 energy drinks and, are a little more muggle-ish, I would say, because they're suffering. Right. They don't like it. They want to change. They want it to be fairly easy or fun to change.
Right.
And it's like, you can do this.
Yes.
With both the edginess and the pleasure that comes from community, from doing things together. There's a lot about mirror neurons of doing things together with other people that really, make it more entertaining and fun. That's how cults start, right? Yeah. So I'm we just do this naturally. Just kidding. So we're going to use those neural pathways to help bring this into the culture throughout. So it doesn't have to just be some elite thing, right? Yeah. It can be everybody. And
to have an elite thing, that's just silly. I mean, I think that
we've already got that, it's like, exactly. Sure, rich people get all the therapy they need.
That's what I was just going to say. It's like, unfortunately, we live in a society where the rich people have the time and stuff to really explore all these different options. But people that are working the 40-hour-a-week job, they don't know what to do. And that's why I think that this is such a good idea, because if we can make it so that it's 3 days or 4 days where they only need to miss a day of work or something, but they're getting, but they're getting this like shower of change, and then they can bring it back and by then maybe the caffeine has left their system a little bit. And on Monday they're ready to start new. And then maybe 6 months they're going to need to do it again. You know what I mean? Yeah. Maybe in a year they need to do it again, because I certainly do. Yeah. That's what I'm saying is in myself, I notice all these flaws. And like, did you read Waking Up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What did you think of it? Did you like it?
I thought it was great. I love it that he's such a skeptic and actually did the years of renunciation and sitting meditation and say, okay, this is what I got out of it.
Yeah.
It's like super pragmatic at the same time without getting all woo woo about it.
Yeah. And it's so unfortunate that, this is the problem with the skeptic society, is that that you say meditation and they cringe. It's like I talked to Dr. Stephen Novella on one of the most recent podcasts that I did. And he, the skeptic, he has this podcast, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. And I had to bring up meditation to him because I heard him talk negatively about it in a talk. He was just like, what the meditation, ha ha ha. And he kind of chuckled about it. So in the podcast, I was like, so I heard you say this thing about meditation, but don't you think that it could be useful in this way? And then he was like, he started to kind of open up to the idea of it a little bit, because I think that he was starting to realize that, his whole problem was that nobody really asserts what meditation really is. And I was trying to say that's because you're listening to the wrong people. There are masters of everything, and the masters will tell you what meditation is. And the masters are going to tell you that meditation is just nothing. You know what I mean? It's just being aware of your life flashing before your eyes. And to be able to hone into that is a skill that I don't have. How many people have the skill to, and this is the thing that Sam Harris is talking about. And since I read that book, it has changed my life, because I've just realized every single day continuously, I'll catch myself running these scripts in the brain. That's just, you know what I mean? And then I'm just like, what the fuck am I thinking about right now? Why am I even
and you catch yourself at it, that's what's called mindfulness. It's not about not having a mind. It's about noticing what the mind and the content is there, and recognizing, the content isn't me, it's just content.
Right.
And I can either turn it on or turn it off once I bring my awareness to it, and that's, pretty well established as a really scientific thing. It's a brain hack that they figured out 6,000 years ago, and it got, inculcated with a lot of religiosity and dogma and big promises. And things like that.
Quantum physics. But they don't, you know what I mean? Quantum physics has become like these catchphrases for people that are unscientific and totally weird. And this is like the thing. It's like, yes, you can be skeptical, and just because something's being used by the woo-woo community or whatever doesn't mean that there's not validity to it.
Exactly. It's like there's a difference between being a skeptic and being a cynic.
Exactly. And this is like, I love being a skeptic. That is definitely what I would consider myself to be. But you have to be able to understand that spiritual experiences even if they're just a byproduct of neural activity in the brain, are still spiritual experiences. You still have those experiences, and they're still
experiences are a
important.
thing. They're a real
Valuable.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they can change the way you are. Near-death experiences traditionally change people's perspective on everything. They become kinder. They become more open-minded. It's just like across the board.
Right.
And so you can reproduce near-death experiences by like taking a bunch of
therapy.
electroshock therapy. You're taking a bunch of ayahuasca, or there's different ways to do this. But it's just mind hacking once again.
Right.
So we cross over from the woo-woo to the pragmatic, and without being too divisive. The whole Tantra thing, right? Western sexual Tantra was full of woo-woo stuff.
Yeah. And it was also full of people that were looking at getting an edge on fucking chicks. You know what I mean?
Like, there's all sorts of shadow and weird and bad stuff that was with it. But also there was gold underneath there. It's like, wow, that turned me on to the fact that there's more going on in my body than I thought. And there's more possibilities about what I can do. And this thing in this energy field, chi, all these things is like, well, that became much more real for me. It's the sort of what I call practical woo-woo, practical magic.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, if it works, it's like,
well, it's like the placebo effect. People are always like, oh, you can't do things with your mind. And it's like, wait, really? Because there is literally every medical study that's peer reviewed has something called the placebo effect, because the mind has the power to change things.
Right.
Yeah.
And the whole goal of releasing medication is to take it a little bit above the placebo, which is the ability that your mind has to fix something.
Right.
So it's like there's the nocebo effect too, which is just that in the negative direction. And these are actual scientific methods that show that the mind has the ability to do things.
It shows we're in the dark ages. We're still figuring out this whole thing, but hacking your mind and hacking your body is an option, right?
Yeah.
It has a lot to do with time and attention, bandwidth, and frankly, intelligence. You really got to be able to like do that self-introspective stuff. And I forget who it was that said, hey, if you look at the world, and if the average IQ is 100 points on this IQ test, for whatever valid reason that is, that means 50% of the people are below that.
Right.
And it's like, wow, okay, that means there's a lot. And at 87, I think, percentile, the Army won't even take you because you can't do anything.
Right.
You're more work than you produce. Right. At a certain level of intelligence. And, we wouldn't expect a dog to be able to do quantum physics or to do meditation or self-improvement. There's a merit system. There's a hierarchy there. I don't want to really get into it, but we have an opportunity because of who we are. And we want to attract those people who are into self-actualization, that have the bandwidth, because there's the 100th monkey thing. We want to move this culture, this whole civilization, towards something more sustainable and generative. I'm all about saving the world. Right. Yeah. And I can only do it one relationship at a time.
Right.
Because I think that's where my gift is. That's where the root is. But, meditation, alternative medicine, quantum physics, all of this is all coming available to us. And we want to like pick and choose what we take in and what works and what doesn't, without being a cynic. And just rejecting everything and
without being too gullible. It's once again, we're out of the black and white, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then we can take along people and say, hey, look, maybe you don't have time or the wherewithal to learn this stuff. I did the work for you.
Yes.
Here's a simple package you can do. We're all in kindergarten. We do an hour of meditation every day in kindergarten. Yeah. That's just what we do in school, kids. And it doesn't matter whether you got an 87 or 132. Right. You do meditation, you're gonna feel a little better in your body. You're gonna be a little more in control of yourself. You're gonna recognize the difference between thoughts and self, between feelings and self. You have the differentiation that happens, and happiness is available to everybody, and that if they do it right, so that's kind of why I'm in the self-improvement world, and even cross over into the woo-woo. Because I look for practical ways to actually do this and ways of mapping it that people can understand. So, I come at it from both a scientific and a kind of, I don't want to say new age, because that brings a lot of stuff, but I came out of that era with a skeptical mind.
Yeah. Well,
You know, I
I mean,
started out as a scientist, and I got pretty woo woo, and then I had personal experiences around things that were not on the scientific list, and I started getting some practical results. And I'm like, okay, I can integrate some of that into my teaching without forcing it down anybody's throat or making it a dogmatic kind of thing. You don't have to believe in angels to work with me. But if you do believe in angels, you can also work with me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's great. I think that it's really cool to I think it's so important to be skeptical. I think it's really cool to embrace everything that you can and embrace, like, I love the spiritual and the meditation and all that shit. Like it sounds so funny to say it like that, but I really do. It's like I love being open to being here, present, and being absolutely. And feeling, you know, like admiring the beauty and knowing, like, and then understanding the way that, like, for example, Lawrence Krauss and I were just talking last week about light and how, you know, what light is and how, like, you know, electromagnetism works. And it's like knowing the science behind that is something that is mind-blowingly beautiful. And it's what we exist for. Like, the whole reason we exist is for this reason. So, like, that whole, like, you know, we are light beings. Well, technically we kind of are, because we absorb electromagnetic frequencies, and that is what creates atomic regulation. And, like, there's this thing about, like, where it's like it can be said new agey, but it can also be said scientifically. And then when you combine it, you can see the beauty in it while being pragmatic and not fucking thinking that it's like this, like, extra, you know what I mean, extra, like, thing or
you don't have to think of it as a mechanistic Newtonian universe anymore. Right. We outgrown that, and it does open us up to a lot of, like, tomfoolery and speculation. But it really does come down to what works. You know, if you can light a fire with just using your hand, go for it. You know, it's like, I don't know if that's actually true or not, but I have definitely felt heat in my hand through like just thinking about it. You know, it's like some weird things have happened to me that kind of opened it up, and that's a subjective experience, whatever. And when it comes to relationship, you guys know, everybody who's ever been in love knows there's some fucking magic thing going on there. That thing about picking up the phone just before they call, or knowing they're in trouble, or knowing they're cheating on you. Without ever any contact. They could be hundreds of miles away and you said something's wrong. And you're like, okay, no measurement, no scientific basis to that. And yet it's a common experience. You know, being able to know if somebody's looking at the back of your head. You know, perceptive senses.
It's so weird.
Scientifically there, but nobody can tell you why.
I know. It's
how does that work? Right?
I know. It's so interesting.
Energy fields, the heart magnetic field, and things like that. So you start to combine and play with this. Like I said, we're in the dark ages. We get to play with it a little bit, but it's all about pragmatism. How can we make the world a better place? How can we make it more humane? How can we make it more sustainable for all the species on this planet? One of the things, the tenets of their Buddhist religion, is that we are all interconnected. And that's not what we're getting taught in our normal day-to-day life. If we have that sense of interdependence, then even in our personal relationships, we have to treat each other kinder. We're just gonna have to do it because we recognize you're me. You're a reflection of me. And if I treat you badly, I'm treating myself badly. If I throw trash or you know, toxify the earth, I'm damaging my own nest.
Absolutely.
You know, that's a form of insanity, right? And so we're in this really crazy, insane me culture, and we have to start somewhere. And we're going to start with this drive to mate, to get together, to have these experiences of being with someone, falling in love and all that. It's like, wow, I'm going to use that as the lever to create a kinder and gentler, more conscious
I think you're
culture.
right about like having like like one of the big things is making sure that women have high standards, because really, if we can educate women, which is like something that we already know scientifically, that once women become educated, society just gets way better.
So, empower, giving them their power around this stuff. Because in my opinion, and I think this could probably be validated, is that culture follows women. Men will follow. Men will do whatever it takes in order to have the mating experience that they are designed to do. Right? It's like testosterone, focus, the drive to have sex, to get the best mate possible, to spread your seed as far as possible. All these, DNA things. But women have always driven the culture. They just sort of forgot their power for a while because of the dynamics of weaponizing things. And we got out of the nomadic thing and got into agriculture. If you've ever read Ishmael, you realize how this sort of flip happened and women lost a lot of their influence and power to create culture that is long-term thinking. Women, through their womb wisdom, are connected to eternity, basically. And so they think about the welfare of the children and their children and their children, whereas men think more short-term in general. They're goal-oriented. They get a rush off of getting just the touchdown, and they don't care about the consequences that happen afterward. They're just kind of thinking of that. And that's great, but women will guide it. So if women wanted more safety, more bigger houses, wanted yards, they wanted big cars, they wanted fur coats, they wanted men who, controlled a lot of had power, then that's what they got. Men just did that, right? And they played that game out. I ask men, it's like, if women disappeared from the planet, what would you do?
Right.
Going back to our original thing, is like, wow, everything we do is really at root around this sexual selection thing.
Yeah.
And why we do everything we do. So women have a lot more influence and power than they even realize now. And they are waking up, and they are using that power, and it's beginning to change culture. And there's a lot of pushback. It's a hellish ride out of.
That's women have more power than men realize too. I mean, that's the funny thing about it, is because at the core, once you realize these things, you begin to realize that, like, you're not really doing shit for, what I mean, for yourself. This is all like this weird biology that's just, what I mean, just kind of like these scripts running, like I was saying earlier. And it's really bizarre to like sit back and just recognize, like, wait, what the fuck am I doing this for? Like, why am I doing all of these things? And like, not to stop doing them necessarily, but just to recognize it at face value.
Yeah, that intention.
And we start small, right, Kendra? You start saying, okay, I'm only going to accept this kind of behavior, or I'm going to call out this kind of behavior loudly. And I'm now getting cultural support for calling that out more.
Right.
Not perfect. Fucking, the thing's insane. I'm offended every day, all the time. But it's happening, right? It is happening. And it's the young men. It's the boys who are watching this go down,
right?
That need the kind of like, well, how do I interact? How do I approach the feminine? And the feminine can say what they want and what the standard is. It's up to other men to teach young men how to be this way through example, through showing it, through being it. And it's, we gotta the crust is rising, but damn, it's hard. And women recognizing that they have been holding themselves back out of safety and needs and the economics and the whole power structure that arose 6,000 years ago for some very good cultural reasons. And now those reasons have changed. They've really and it's only been like 50 years, right? That it's really changed. So we're still reeling from
we're doing pretty fucking good. I mean, if you really think about it, man, like we've had like these massive cultures and societies for like couple thousand years tops. And I mean, for how little rape and murder there is, when you really, I mean, there's still a lot, but when you really think about how fucking crazy it is that, and to keep in mind, as shitty as this is to say, rape was one of the number one ways of reproduction for thousands and thousands of years. So
it's like option number 2 for beta males and for genetic diversity and things like that. It's like, okay, that's why it's wired in there as a possibility, but we do evolve. It's not a necessity, and it's certainly not a necessity anymore. Right. So there's certain cultural kind of ways we can support people being kind to each other and collaborative and empowered. Right. Because an empowered man and an empowered woman, these things never come up. They just don't. Right. It's around people who are disempowered, who are under supported, who are wounded, that these things happen. And our culture is like hell bent on creating wounded people.
Yeah, no shit.
You know,
That's
and it's
crazy.
like, oh, that's where the you know, we talk about financial equality, but really it comes down to the equality of care and support and nurturance, humanitarian stuff, opportunity and things like that. It's not about wealth so much as it is about character, right? And the ability to grow character. And even it doesn't matter your intelligence, it doesn't matter who you are, you can grow great character.
Yeah.
You have to be modeled it and given an opportunity or conditions where those can arise. You need to have just the right amount of stress that helps you grow and become strong, and not so much stress that it becomes an adverse childhood experience where you get a wound and you're no longer able to function socially. It's getting better, but we're going to go through a really, really hard time for the next 100 years or so if we make it. As the old school dies out, and the new school comes in.
Yeah.
One of the great things I've been hearing from women lately is that they notice there's like this gap right in the baby boomer thing where it was just really kind of hard with men, but they're noticing that the young guys who are like 19, 20, 25, there's like more and more of them that are already fucking tuned in and on it. And they're like super attractive. There's these 40-year-old women going, the 25-year-old guys seem to have it together so much more than the guys who are like 50 and 60 who are supposed to have it together.
Right.
50 and 60-year-old boys, boymen. And then we got these like young guys who already have the fucking download. Right. And it's kind of weird. It's kind of like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do? Cougar with these guys?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Which is weird,
more cougars.
But it actually makes sense because if you teach someone when they're younger,
they get good parenting. You get good results. And of course, there's this whole thing about like older guys, right? Mm-hmm. And younger women. It's like, hey, I've noticed it too. Younger women are like, they're not just sexually attractive. Put that aside. They're like fucking woke. Yeah, and they're cool to be with, and they're kind of like undamaged, right? And it's like, okay, you're out of my range to mate with or to be partners with, but damn, I love hanging out with you because you're fresh and you're not fucked up about this. In fact, you've got your power together, you got your boundaries together, you're good at communicating. Just the other night, we did a solstice gathering, and one of the things we did, it was a dance and all that, but we did this moment where everybody turned to each other randomly and just soul gazed, which is looking into someone's eyes and opening yourself up to let them see you for about 2 or 3 minutes. And, I got together with a couple of people that were kind of contemporary my age, and man, they were just like all nervous and it was like giggling and, couldn't really do it. And a couple of younger people, both men and women, it's like they're in their 20s and they just nailed it.
Yeah.
They're just like, I'm good. And it's like, they let me in, they let me see, and we're just like bow to each other. I'm like, damn, you're like little Buddhas, I just turned 60, right? There's the yesterday or day before yesterday was my 60th birthday, by the way.
I didn't know that. Wow. I knew that it was coming up. I didn't realize that's a happy birthday. Holy shit, man. Happy
it was birthday. pretty awesome.
And that's so
like,
cool.
It's like, no wonder I want to hang out with 20 and 30 somethings a lot. But I also really appreciate there's a whole, I don't want to, get into the whole sexual politics of it, but it's like, I got my contemporaries too, and we're out there. It isn't just ubiquitously bad news for men in their 40s, 50s, or women in their 40s and 50s and 60s. Right. There's avatars, and there are people who've been doing the work, and people are now becoming elders. And that's where I'm at. I'm becoming an elder. So I get to nurture these younger people and mentor these younger people through my presence, through, showing up. I mean, I'm sure that these kids who were like soul gazing with me were like, wow, I feel so much better because there's this guy who's not creepy. He's not weirding me out. He's not just doing this, he's like, he's solid. And it's like, we're out there. So maybe, it was less in my generation, more in the next. And that's evolution. It's like, it is coming on and it is getting better, but we got to figure out how to do this thing, so it's, the faster we do it, the less damage we're going to have. Right. And it is all about the kids. It really is about the teenagers and the youngsters and children in general. But it starts with us who are having, or you, because you guys are the age. I'm past breeding age, so I get to be grandpa, but it's grandpas and parents and that would create those next generation who are going to save the world. They are going to be the new culture. They are going to do things differently. They won't grow up thinking they need to like rape and pillage the earth to get oil, to make money, to, it's like as if that's a really healthy purpose of life. It's like, oh, that's fucking wrong.
Right.
That was based on a misapprehension of an infinite resource. It's not infinite. We live on a little blue ball, and we've known that since the 70s. We're not the center of the universe. Oh my God, we've known that since the 1600s. It was just 320 years ago that we noticed that there was another galaxy out there.
I know.
That we weren't the center of the universe, and that there was other galaxies. Now there's this deep space. It's like, oh my God, there's trillions of galaxies with trillions of stars, and we're this fragile little blue ball, and this sort of mistake that we're these monkeys with opposable thumbs and a barely neocortex are going, we need to do this better, and we can. That's the fucking awesome thing, is we can evolve ourselves now. Like we talk about AI, but we are the artificial intelligence.
Did you hear that?
We program ourselves.
Did you listen to the podcast that I did with Mick West?
I haven't listened to it yet. No.
Okay, you should check that one out. We talked about AI in it, and I was just, I haven't really talked very much about AI, just because I haven't really cared that much. But he brought it up to me, and he was saying how nervous he was and how afraid he was of it. And I'm like, man, I just think that AI is just the next step for evolution. If they can figure out how to do like actual consciousness in it or whatever, I don't even know what consciousness is. And
nobody knows what consciousness is.
No, I know.
That's the hard question, right?
Yeah.
Like, is it awake?
If
Does
they
it pass the Turing test,
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is like, really, when you think about it, I mean, how many people are really awake? How many people are even passing the Turing test themselves? You know what I mean?
We're just basically mammals, little animals.
We're just responding to total biological needs at every single moment in time. For the most part, it's like to take a step back and do that whole meditation thing, whether it actually be sitting down and doing meditation, or whether it just be acknowledging the fact that you don't know what the fuck's going on. But I mean, it's like in every single moment, we're just running on these like needs. Like everything does really come down to some kind of a need. And when you look at it so rudimentary like that, I think that if they can ever replicate consciousness into a robot, then it just makes sense that if it really is conscious and self-aware, and then it's just like, this is a much better version of what humanity could be. And unfortunately,
I've read enough science fiction to know it's like, oh yeah, well, you take away the endocrine system and all of those needs and everything, and it's like, well, what's the purpose of life?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. But all of that purpose seems to just be an illusion for, or a illusion for biology, really. But I mean, and this is kind of what I was talking about with Mick West. And I said the same exact thing to him. It's like, if you get down to consciousness and you say, what is driving consciousness? Why are we self-aware? Is it just to be better biological creatures for better reproduction, etc.? Then, I mean, what would be driving a robot? I mean, really, what would be driving? What's the motivation? How could you program an artificial intelligence to have desires and cares? I mean, and if it's just a program that you're doing, aren't they just going to recognize that eventually and just be like, fuck this is stupid.
Yeah, waste of time.
I mean, right? This is a waste. Yeah, exactly. Why are we even doing this? There's no point. There's no reason.
There's the science fiction thing, It's like, how do we enhance ourselves without losing ourselves?
Right.
Because both of those, the biological part is where both the devil and the angel dwell, right? And within us, it's like what drives both our evil and our good,
right?
Is all that biological stuff. And so, thank God I'm a human. It's really fun to get to play down here and do this hacking into it and realize, I'm not just stuck being a victim of my history, and I'm not just a victim of my biology. I'm actually just slightly riding above it, and it's mostly driving me, and it's mostly I'm just going along with the river for the most part.
Yeah.
But I can kind of guide it. I can guide it away from acts of evil towards acts of good because of choice, free will. It's like, oh, well, I decided to, clean my room and not, pour my motor oil out in the backyard. I decided to recycle it and try to do something, or, use it, reuse it somehow. It's like, oh, that's what consciousness gets to do is make choice. And it's a fun game. I would not want to be downloaded into a computer.
No, me neither.
I'm having way too much fun. in the mud and the blood and the guts. And,
yeah, I agree.
I think the whole ascension into, the singularity is a masculine fucking escape.
I also think it's just, I think it's such a idealistic thing. I mean, this is just maybe me being pessimistic about the whole thing, but I don't, for one, I don't see the purpose of it, but I also just don't see how that's even reasonable when you look at what
what fun would that be? And this really comes down to fun, right? Are we having fun here?
Right.
There's this really beautiful word called eudaimonia, and it's a Greek word, and it means satisfaction. It means a job well done. It means feeling like there's meaning and purpose in what you're doing, right? And so it's kind of the opposite of hedonic, which is I'm just doing it for the pleasure that I'm getting out of it, which is short-lived, and then I have to get more pleasure, right?
Right.
But this is like what drives the upward rise of humanity, of being conscious, of being a being that's self-reflective, is like we can decide to do something better, not just because it feels good in the short term, but because it's better. It's like, wow, we invented writing, and it was like there was a great satisfaction about the printed word and being able to symbolize everything through words, and then cast spells, do spelling through this. It's like, wow, we're magical, amazing creatures. I want to just keep that magic going, but I don't expect that it would be all that fun to be an emotionless machine drifting through space and just reproducing itself mechanically.
For no
reason. That's why I do and not engineering. I do relationships. I'm a heart doctor. I want life to feel meaningful and purposeful for people, even in the midst of the sort of dystopian purposelessness that we also kind of reach for. The reason I mentioned it's a male thing is that if you think about the masculine principle in the universe as ascending, the female principle is the horizontal, and it includes everything. So it's like the ground that makes it all worth. It's like the Shakti Shiva thing, the principle, the Hindu idea of the principle of the universe was a bindi. It was just the big pre-Big Bang, that was their idea, it was just a point, a singularity with nothing. And then the masculine principle came in and initiated everything, just like blew it up by creating something called nothing around it, right? So there's this infinite spaciousness that is the masculine principle of the universe. It's completely separate, right? It's nothing. It's nothingness, the void, right? And the feminine principle is everything. It's everything, right? So it's like, oh, well, what's bigger, everything or nothing? Right? And what surrounds everything? Nothing. But it doesn't contain it.
Right.
Right? And so you think about the possibilities of, we talked about women driving culture and things like that. Ultimately, if you get to the biggest picture, you're looking at these masculine, feminine energy, these yin, yang kind of things. You say, oh, it just as above, so below. Let's bring those ideas down into our intimate relationships of, right, men are not supposed to create a walled garden for women to be in. They're to be able to hold space for the storm that women are, to watch them move and change, and they're everything happening. And man, you can't put that in a cup. You can't put the ocean, you get to sail along the ocean. You can go with the ocean. You can sail, you can like use a tiller and some sails to kind of guide on the ocean, but you're never going to contain that. And you better get used to that idea.
Yeah.
It's a mutual respect, because everything can't be without nothingness around it.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're like, oh, right. If we're at actual equals, but differentiated equals.
Yeah.
Right. That's what the ideal relationship would feel like. We're actually expressing both the masculine and feminine principles within us. Gender has less to do with it. It becomes around mutual empowerment and equality and power as we are. Masculine consciousness of linear, get it done, do that kind of like step, beginning, middle, and end thing. Masculine principle of the universe, not exclusive to men. Feminine principles of the universe. Pay attention to everything. Everything is connected to everything else. It matters how we interact as well as what we interact with, right? And we carry that within ourselves as too, right? And to be able to integrate those and then celebrate that in the other and bring it up so that we're no longer doing this divisive adversarial thing of trying to get something from someone or this whole idea of mating for power, right? Instead of mating for like the incredible art that can be created when everything and nothing begin to interact creatively, when the masculine and feminine principles of the universe embody within each of us and begin to do this beautiful dance together, so it's no longer exclusive or separate, and yet it's not just mushy melded nothingness, right? It's like, wow, unity and division, right? If you look at my logo on my business, it's actually the yin yang.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I have a tattoo right here of it, and it's because it is about that unity and yet difference, and being able to stand in that paradox. The paradox of being in relationship is really fucking hard and the best thing you'll ever do.
Right.
That's impossible to make it to easy street. Yeah. And yet it's worth it.
Yeah, life is kind of all about paradoxes, really.
It is. It really is about not resolving, but living with and being able to encompass these paradoxes. So, when people work with me, I bring this up. It's like, okay, you're going to have to look at it from the next level up to see that your adversarial stuff, the things you're battling over from another perspective, are perfectly appropriate and are actually useful bits of the art that you can create in your intimacy to create something fantastic that actually benefits the world, that benefits not only you and the world, so it's a win-win situation for everyone, for everything. That would be the ideal that we're searching for and what I want to help promulgate, so as above, so below, big picture, right down to, how are you going to walk in the door with each other? What's the first thing you do in the morning? These kind of things, sort of, what's your ethos? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you there? And letting people's suffering lead them to some kind of awakening or empowerment around this stuff.
Yeah.
I want people to suffer, but hey, if you are having a hard time in your relationship, fucking know you can do something about it.
Yeah, learn.
You don't have to suffer, and it could be the fucking best opportunity you've ever had. Right. You're finally going to outgrow your parents. You're finally going to get over that fear. You're finally going to, become who you always knew you could be and have the relationship you always knew you wanted.
Yeah.
It's just the path there is not what the culture is teaching us. There's another path and it takes work, Right. It's worth it. It's so worth it. I love these conversations because we just went there.
Yeah.
We just went there. It's like, okay.
Feels good.
I think that, we need to do this again soon, because every time that we talk, I feel like I just go through the universe with you. It's great.
It's all great. Connected, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's good that we have the time to sit down and do these conversations, because oftentimes it seems like people want to do it in 30 minutes or less, and it's hard to have a real conversation in 30 minutes. So
it's hard to unpack it even in 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
We just barely scratched across things that I think about all the time. I got tons of them. We talked about a few books and things like that. Yeah. So we'll do it again. I've got some other people I'd love to introduce you to.
Yeah.
And I also recognize that Eric and I, we did a lot of talking, and that's pretty masculine. I guess. I don't know. I'm a talker. God, you can't stop me, right?
You are, but it's great.
But I really wanted to ask you, next time we go, I'm going to start asking Kendra a bunch of questions, and we're going to get Eric on the spot. He's going to have to sit there and kind of take the heat while we hear her side of what it's like to be in relationship with you, dude.
I would love to know.
And what her ideals are, and that kind of stuff, because this is a conversation. Some of the other people I want to bring in are women who really do know their stuff.
Awesome.
You can imagine if we could have a 4-way conversation and kind of, just really bounce a lot of these ideas, and then get down to, I'd love to get to some specific things. Yeah. We touched on the 3-question thing, and we could just elaborate that. I want to do the workshops where I get to teach people this stuff.
Yeah.
And
we need, Oh, that is okay. I'm going
We'll
to.
do some homework.
We're going to start doing some homework on this and start getting something planned for the spring, maybe, because this is something that I'm super serious about, and I know Kendra is as well. And we, we can do live podcasts at this event, film it. You know what I mean? Just kind of get the ball rolling. So
we're going to hit it in all different levels: workshops, media, that kind of stuff, because people need it. Yeah. You know it. All your friends, a lot of your friends are suffering in relationships that aren't going well. A lot of my friends are, almost everybody I meet is. It's like, wow, this is like an epidemic need that is not really being effectively addressed. It's beginning to be addressed and it's out there, and, but wow, is it everybody aware of just how awesome it can be? Yeah. How do we get people who are getting married to do classes before they get married?
Right.
Like, you need to go to college, for at least a few months before you even consider, doing this long-term committed relationship. Or you want to have kids, you got to go to school first. Yeah. It's like, we're not going to let you just go out there and wing it, because I saw how you were with your dog, man. The goldfish died. That is not a good sign, right? It's like, you may not be qualified yet, but we can teach you, that kind of stuff. Get people excited about it. For sure. I'm excited about working with you guys. This is awesome.
Same. And I appreciate your time. So let me pause this really fast, and then I'm just going to close it out with you. Okay. So hang on. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. It's been an awesome long episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And be sure to check out Shivoso Phoenix. He's on Instagram, Facebook, and his website is intimacyarts.com. Until next week, we love you. Bye.